Okay. Put your phone on speaker so I can hear you. Your speaker so I can hear you. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Heads Up Mental Clarity. Please bear with us as we're trying to get our technology together. Okay, Dr. Hampton. So, I can see you, but I can't hear you. You think headphones will work with your computer? Uh-oh. I can't hear you. Okay. What did you say? Okay. Hello, hello, hello. If you are just tuning in, we are going to be on shortly with Dr. Hampton, where we're going to be talking about dementia, matters of the mind, answering questions. So we're trying to get him connected now. Um, we are certainly happy to have you to join us. Please share this live. Okay. Bear with us, please. Thank you guys for coming in, streaming in with us. Please share this on your pages. We're just trying to get connected with the doctor so that we can start to talk about dementia, matters of the mind. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you all. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment section so that when we get started, we'll go ahead and get your questions answered as well. Start a watch party, all of that good stuff. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you tuned in on yesterday, I appreciate you tuning in on yesterday as I highlighted a young Black entrepreneur with her own brand. Today we're going to be talking about dementia, matters of the mind. A lot of people have been asking about us to talk about that topic. So we want to honor that and talk about that topic. If you think you have symptoms, know someone else that has symptoms, or a caregiver, have been a caregiver, know someone else that is a caregiver of someone who has dementia, or you think have dementia, have memory loss, or anything like that, please, this is for you. Chime in with us, and share this this broadcast. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it's something I'm supposed to be doing on my end. No, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's something that I need to do on my end that I can't hear. Let's see. All right. Do you have your the correct mic selected in your cam and mic setting? Yeah. Um, if you're an iPhone, iPad, you may be experiencing a rare Safari bug. Let's see. Let's see. Mute, unmute. Okay. I tried on my end to mute and unmute. Still not working on my end. Appreciate you guys for jumping in. Thank you for jumping in. We're trying to get the doctor set up with us. Do I have to click it? Add to stream. Okay, Doc.
What?
Okay. I can hear you. I can't see you now, but I can hear you.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, so you can hear me, but you can't see me.
Yeah. I don't think it was you. I
Can you
think it
see me
was.
now?
There you go. I can see. Yay!
All right, good. And you can hear
Yeah.
me.
I can hear you and I can see you.
All right.
Um, please,
Well, thank God,
please,
right?
yes, and please forgive this amateur. I am an amateur at this, so it could have been something I was doing or not doing. I appreciate it. I know it's not you because you know what you're
Yeah,
doing.
well, don't worry. Well, it looks like the quality, like I was worried about the phone, but the quality of the iPhone is not bad from what I can see.
It's
So
not.
I
It's
was
not.
worried about that. So it's actually pretty good. So
I use
okay.
my iPhone in telehealth. I use my iPhone sometimes. It's great.
Oh,
So
okay, good.
iPhone is
Okay.
wonderful.
Well, that's
Thank
cool.
you
Well,
so much. Thank you guys for tuning
that's
in.
fair. So
Welcome.
let's get started.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yes. Thank you for chiming in, coming in, and being a guest today. Thank you guys. Welcome to Heads Up Mental Clarity. We have the. I like to think my good doctor, my good friend, Dr. Tony Hampton,
Mm,
and and how a little bit
yeah.
backstory. I worked at the high school that his two sons attended. I was the school counselor, and so that's how we met. And we just kept in contact over the years. And so I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Hampton. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and then
Yeah.
we'll dive into the topic.
Yeah. I think I'm a family doctor. Used to deliver babies and take care of a lot of kids, and now that was on the west side at Circle Family Care. I did that probably for about 10 to 12 years. Then I transitioned away from the obstetrics and peds to adult medicine with Advocate Aurora. Been with them for about 13, 14 years, chronic disease. And, a lot of people don't realize most of these diseases are related to each other, but my job is to help people connect the dots. And people have no idea how they're all the same disease, and it's called metabolic disease, and it's called insulin resistance. So, and you're like, what the heck does that have to do with dementia? Everything. And so once people understand that, then the hope returns. So the goal is to teach people what's the root cause of your disease, and then once they understand that, let's do something about it. And if we can do something about it, then there's hope. And most people think dementia is uncurable, and that's just not true. So you can't wait until you're just like, it's over. You have to do it when it's mild, a little bit past mild. You can actually do better. So I think my goal today is to provide hope. And I also have a guest who will be on my podcast. I'll be interviewing her on Wednesday, and I'll be putting a podcast out on Friday. So on Wednesday, we'll talk about, dietary stuff. And when you get a weight loss stall, that'll be on Facebook and YouTube Live tomorrow evening. And then on Friday, we'll release a podcast episode where we'll talk about dementia. So Amy Berger, if you want to look her up, Amy Berger, Berger, she wrote a book called The Alzheimer's Antidote. And that book shares principles that help people understand how they can improve and or prevent and or reverse early dementia. So that gives people hope, because the medicines don't work. They just don't.
Right. Well, you guys see me looking down. I am taking.
Yeah. So Oh, don't tell me. Do you still hear me, right? Why don't I hear you? This is crazy.
Yep.
Hold on for a sec. It's always something, right? Why don't I hear you?
We can hear you very well.
Hold on. Yeah, it's weird. I'm good. And you still hear me just fine.
Yeah.
That's really weird. Let me do this.
Is it your eyes?
Let me do this. Okay. Nothing there. We were doing just fine a moment ago.
Oh.
So if you hear me, that means the audience hears me?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do this. Until we figure this out, this is crazy. Let's just talk a little bit about it, and what maybe you can do. Let me see if I hit the chat. If I hit the chat feature, I don't know if you see me now. If I hit the chat feature, maybe if there's something you want to throw in that until we figure this out. I just want to keep going because it's just ridiculous. It's just one of those things. So let me just explain some of the principles I want to just share, and then we'll just get some questions as we kind of walk through this. So and I saw your message, so let's just do that. This is crazy. So I have hearing impaired patients too. So okay, so the brain is interesting because it has it uses a lot of the energy of the body. Probably around 20% of the energy that your body uses is the brain, because it's always working. Obviously, the heart's always working and things like that. Muscle's not always working, but it's only 2% of the body's volume. Like, it's only 2%, but yet it uses 20%. So, and it uses a lot of glucose. And so most of us eat a lot of starch and sugar. So because we eat a lot of starch and sugar, that's what our brain's kind of accustomed to using. However, if you use too much sugar in your body, the sugar is it's like a factory with a lot of byproducts, right? And all those byproducts causes damage to the brain. So your brain says, I can't take too much, I can't handle that anymore. So it actually stops allowing the glucose going to the brain. So a person with all this, they could be diabetic with sugar everywhere in their body, but the brain won't have all that sugar in it or glucose because the brain is trying to protect itself from this factory byproduct stuff. So, but it needs energy, right? So, and you're starving the brain when you have all of this starchy, sugary stuff in your body. So, and I'm not talking about when you're 60 or 70. I'm talking about when you're 20 years old and 30, it's the process starts, right?
Wow.
And so because you're not getting that energy, you have these cells, neurons, and it's like your hand, right? So this is the body of the neuron. And then you have these little projections, these dendritic. So what happens is they kind of communicate like this, right? But if you starve this part of the body, it doesn't get its energy, the connections start separating. And when they start separating, now the things are not working well. So a lot of people think the cells in the brain die. They don't die, they become dormant. They just can't connect very well. So the question is, if I can't use my glucose as fuel because my body's trying to protect itself, the question is there another fuel source? And the answer is, of course, and that's ketones. So if you have a person who is struggling with this dementia, and they're struggling because now I'm not saying this is the only possible cause. I'm just saying for most Americans who are insulin resistant, overweight, diabetic, that's the cause. And what happens is, if you can then give them an alternative fuel source, you will then see improvement. So I interviewed Dr. Andy Fong on my last podcast, and he's in North Carolina. And he talked about how he had a patient who came in with 2 or 3 family members. And so if you go back to that episode 6 podcast, Protecting Your Nest, he talked about the patient came in with family members, and then he was then able to come in 6 months, 7, 9 months later by himself driving. Now, you would think that would be impossible.
Wow.
Exactly. So what I'm saying to you guys is, if we can find an alternative fuel source, then the brain has an opportunity, because the neurons didn't die, they just kind of stopped working. They stopped the connections. And some of the reason why they didn't have connections is because of those amyloid plaques that you've heard of. And the amyloid plaques are they're basically plaques that form. You have that form because you have these this amyloid protein that your body should be able to break down and digest, and then you have more protein being made. But sometimes when they're being cut and reshaped, they get stuck, and then when they get stuck, they form these plaques, and the plaques are things we can identify on a CT scan. Not really, more like a PET scan. The CT scan and the MRI show the shrinkage because you're not getting that fuel, but those plaques form, and that's one of the ways we can identify Alzheimer's dementia. You can see those amyloid plaques, but the bottom line, just like cholesterol, all the medicines that are made, they're made to focus on these plaques. They're not made to focus on the inflammation that caused it. And that's why we're so backwards with healthcare, is that we keep treating because there's profit in medications. Because the solution to this is not to make a medicine. The solution is to say, well, how do we reduce inflammation in the body, right? And the way you do that is to not require insulin by eating the right foods. So if you got somebody that's already at the stage where they have dementia, there's some things you can do to help them. Now, the tough part is intermittent fasting. You can't do intermittent fasting on a frail old person who's, so that may not be the right answer, but you can add ketones. You can do things like MCT oil, which is it's a medium chain triglyceride. It's a type of fat from coconut. And so if you ingest that fat source, that'll actually help them. And then they have ketone supplements that would help. So I don't necessarily recommend MCT oil and ketones for all my patients, but for people who have this type of condition, who you don't want to put them on an intermittent fasting protocol. Now, if you got somebody that's like 50, 60, and they have diabetes and they're overweight, this person definitely should do intermittent fasting plus maybe supplement with ketones to help the brain have an alternative fuel source. And this is what Amy Berger wrote about in her book and the types of principles that she teaches. And what it does is it provides hope for people who are looking for hope, because the doctor's just going to say, well, do some crossword puzzles, take this medicine. The medicines only work for a few months to a year. And then the decline continues because you're not addressing the root cause. It may increase they have different types. It may help, but it won't address the root cause. There's other possibilities. People can have deficiencies in vitamins like B12. They can have a low thyroid. Some people are genetically predisposed to it. They can have mercury toxin exposures in the population. All these things are possible reasons for people to get dementia. But ultimately, what's coming out as a theory for a lot of Americans in particular is this ideal of insulin resistance, and we need to work on that. So I just wanted to kind of frame some of those thoughts, because I think most people listening probably haven't heard a lot of that before. So I want them to know that there's hope. And you may not get it from the doctor's office, because most of the doctors don't know this, to be honest, because they're not trained on diet, nutrition. They're trained on what's the next medicine I can try on my patient. And it's not their fault. It's just the nature of healthcare in the United States. But if there's no hope in the current model that we have, then we have to provide hope by looking at an alternative way of doing this. And that's what this model really does. There's also, so that was the Alzheimer's antidote. There's another book, I can't think of the author, The End of Alzheimer's. They take a more of a functional medicine approach where they look at the root cause. Obviously, it's dietary, and they look at other factors beyond diet. And what you find is that if you can give people alternative ways of addressing this, then they have hope. This is the type of resource, those two books, where the average person can just get an audiobook, listen to it, and start applying those principles for their family member. And if you have a family history of dementia, you can apply those principles yourself. And what happens is, again, the medicines, they just don't work very well. And it'll make sense though, like, cholesterol medicines don't really work very well either, because they're focused on the plaques, but they're not focused on the inflammation that caused the plaques. The plaques, rather from cholesterol or from this amyloid and dementia, it's your body's way of trying to protect you and try to help you, and react to the stressors that it's facing. But in no way is it, if you get rid of it's almost like I always use the example, somebody comes to your house and robs you, and they leave, and the police show up, and then you come to the house and they arrest you. So cholesterol is like you. You're trying to go back and secure your house and fix it, tuck point it, and the police say that's the problem. It wasn't the guy who started the problem, the inflammation. And so we have to go back to a model where we're able to address that. And again, it's not being taught in medical school. Hopefully that'll start to change as the hypotheses of what the causes are. And hopefully there is some research being done in some countries like Canada, because in this country it's more profit driven. And in Canada, they got some research where they're not as concerned about the profit. And in those countries, hopefully that we can get enough data to support the work that Amy Berger did and others who are in this field. So that's I just wanted to give a little foundational thoughts on the things that people need to think about. The only other thing I'll mention is, in order to be diagnosed with dementia, you really okay. So in terms of, symptoms, right? So you have all of these different types of dementia. The one that we always think about is Alzheimer's dementia, right? So with Alzheimer's dementia, you certainly have, it's almost like a collection of symptoms. You have memory problems, and it tends to be short-term memory initially, and then long-term memory a little bit later. And these are things that, if you hear the term cognitive impairment, right, that's a bucket of symptoms. So cognitive impairment includes my memory's not the same. So I have a family member who has dementia, and he will tell you to the T what happened 30 years ago. But then you ask him what happened 5 minutes ago, he won't remember it. So because those new memories that need to be formed require things to be together. And so, and some of those long-term memories are in different parts of the brain that are still kind of okay. Um, Another thing that happens with patients with this is that their ability to understand, like, they call it sequencing, like what should be the next thing I should do. If I'm traveling down the road, what's the next thing I need to do? Where do I need to go? And that gets disrupted. So that's why a lot of people with dementia, they sometimes get lost because they just can't figure out. They walk out the house and they don't even know why they walked out the house. So their ability to kind of make those kind of decisions fades. Definitely object identification. So if I have, here are my keys, right? Now, if you look at if you can't find your keys, you probably don't have dementia, right? If you don't know what your keys are used for, you probably got dementia. You know what I
Got
mean? It's
it.
like a big difference. Like
Mm-hmm.
we all, I don't, hell, if it wasn't here, I probably wouldn't know where we're at. So it's like, so I think the key is that some of this, but those are subtle things. So as people get older and they start to do little things, is that just they're getting a little older, or is that, so you have to really pay attention. And then there are some being able to process and understand language. So sometimes they get confused. And what they do is a workaround. They're not quite sure. So they just kind of, do a workaround and just kind of say what they think it is. And they're a little, and they're aware that something's not right, but they don't want you to kind of notice it. So because they don't want to be that person that's sent to the nursing home because they got dementia. So they know enough to be dangerous, right? So that's kind of Alzheimer's. You think about those bucket of things. And by the way, if somebody has a memory issue and it goes away, if it's like sudden, that's delirium. It's like, okay, they were fine, then they went to the hospital, and then they're not fine. That's probably delirium, unless they went to the hospital and already had problems. And then the hospital visit will exacerbate or make it worse. But dementia tends to, you have to have at least 6 months of something's not right going on before you can kind of categorize it. Then you have people in this country, because of the inflammation in the diet, vascular dementia. And that means that you have the same symptoms I just described, plus you may have an issue with your circulation. So if you have people with poor circulation around their heart, they've had a stroke, a heart attack, or maybe peripheral vascular disease in their legs, those types of people have probably vascular dementia. And you literally, you don't have to see amyloid plaques or any of that stuff. It's just a different kind of cause. Then you have something called Lewy body. And I'm just thinking about the top four that come to mind. I tend to see Alzheimer's, and when we start getting into these other categories, a lot of times we're kind of referring to the neurologists also. But the people with Lewy bodies, they have a lot of problems with the same symptoms, except that they also have sleep issues, and they have, I think they have visual hallucinations. So they actually start to have, now you can have hallucinations with other types, but that's particularly prevalent in the Lewy body. The only other one I'll probably mention is it's frontotemporal, and I don't see that a lot, but I just know that with frontotemporal, they tend to have emotional issues, and I know they tend to have hygiene issues, but it's a different part of the brain that's affected. And then you got all kinds of people, I mean, obviously, if you have a B12 deficiency, if you have now, the good thing about B12 deficiency, you just give B12 and it goes away. That's beautiful. If you have a super, super, super low thyroid, that's the type of thing that will improve when you treat it. We always do these blood tests just to make sure, but I'll be honest, in my experience, it ends up being the Alzheimer's dementia most of the time, just because of the nature. When we started to have obesity and diabetes epidemics, that's when dementia kind of kicked in. To be honest with you, um, they call dementia type 3 diabetes. I don't know if you've heard
Mm-hmm.
that term, but
No.
so that tells you right there that this is a insulin resistance, too much the sugar, you can't process the glucose. It's the same disease as diabetes, obesity, heart disease, stroke. It's all like insulin. That's why if you look at the stuff I talk about, I always talk about metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, because they're all the same disease. So, and they're all dietary, ironically. So once we kind of get that message out that that's how it works, then you will have a path to help people deal with this. So I'll kind of stop with that. So let me know if you have some other things you want to focus on. But those are like huge takeaways. It's reversible if it's early enough, and it's called type 3 diabetes. So anybody listening, just type in type 3 diabetes on the computer, and you'll see dementia pop up. It's like mind-boggling. I didn't even know that term a few years ago. So, and I went to medical school, and yet I didn't know there was a connection between your blood, your too much inflammation from sugar. So it's been eye-opening for me, to be honest with you.
Okay. And as the doctor go and he's answering questions,
Yeah.
I am texting him questions to answer.
Yeah. A lot of people, I would say dementia is a big category, uh, and everything else is under that bucket. So it's just like COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is divided into, it could be like chronic bronchitis or emphysema, but it's still COPD. So dementia, all the things I mentioned, Lewy body, Alzheimer's, there are different forms of dementia. Normal pressure, hydrocephalus is one of them. And with that one, you have problems with balance and gait, and you have incontinence. So a lot of people with that, they actually have a lot of problems holding their bladder. They have all the other symptoms like cognitive impairment, like memory and stuff. But so dementia means the big bucket. It's like everything included in one bucket, but we tend to think dementia and Alzheimer's because of the fact that it's the most common. Yeah, so that's how you want to think about that. So I think for anybody listening, let me just give a couple of more things to think about that are critical.
Okay.
If you, besides getting a book and and thinking about reducing starch and sugar, and maybe intermittent fasting for an appropriate person, what else do you do? And I think there's resources like, so another resource would be Care Blazers. So if you go to YouTube and just type in Care Blazers, this is a lady who gives very practical advice. And what I tell people is, how about you look at one video a day? You can go to her site and just type in, what happens if the family member thinks they need to go to work, but they don't work anymore? So my brain used to tell me, you say to them, you don't work anymore. And that's the wrong answer.
Okay.
Because they're going to get agitated and, they've already dressed, they're ready to go. So what she would say is, in front of them, you get on the phone. This is what you call loving people well. You're not lying to them. You're just loving them well.
Yes.
And you get on the phone and you say, hey, George at the job, my dad said that he was wondering if he had to come in today. Oh, he don't have to come in. Oh, okay, great. You know what? Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to tell him right now. And I think we'll just go for a walk instead. So what you do is you have to play that game because you want to reduce the stress in the house. But the doctors won't tell you this because they don't know. So unless they've had a family member with it and they figured it out. So that Care Blazers website, and she does have, once you go to her site, there's downloadable documents. And it's because basically what she's trying to do is, how do you care for the caregiver? Because the caregiver going to have dementia in a minute because it's so stressful, right?
Yes.
So how do you care for the caregiver? And by allowing what happens is, if you look at a video a day, what happens is when those things occur, you'll have tools in the toolkit. If you had never listened to the videos, you won't know what to say or do. So the goal is to build up the information in your brain so you'll better be prepared to address those issues. So I just think that that's one of the best resources that I've seen. The other is to learn more about what you can do so you can restore hope. But if you have somebody with dementia, you have to aggressively restore hope, because if you don't, the time will run out, right? So all of those amyloid plaques and they call them these tangles and things that you see on these scans, those Lewy bodies for Lewy body dementia you can see on the scan. All of these things will only worsen. So the good news is, though, these connections I talked about, they actually start to get better with the change. But if it's gotten to a point where it's so far along, it may be too far down the path. So the goal is to get people help early in the process. And then if you're too far down the process, then you just focus on how do I effectively manage and support my family member. Even another thing that she would have on her video would be, okay, so when to go to the nursing home. So she'll have like a checklist. Okay, they're not able to, they're incontinent of their stool, right? If they're incontinent of their stool, then maybe that's the time when I just can't take care of them anymore. So she'll give you, and what happens when you learn these things, you'll have permission to actually make a decision that you don't want to make because you've heard an expert say it's time. You can't do this anymore. And I've seen people sick themselves because they tried to take care of people that they really couldn't take care of. So I think it's really important to have a conversation around what's the best time. And sometimes the doctor is not the best person to let you know because they don't have the experience. All they know are, I can refer you to the neuropsychological examination so you'll know if you have it, versus a mini mental exam, which is not as intense. I think our president didn't have a neuropsych eval. He probably just had like the easier test, with all due respect to him. If he had the real test, maybe they would have found something. But so the docs know, okay, we got this Aricept medicine, and I think it's a choline esterase inhibitor, and it just increases the activity between those nerves a little bit. And then you have Namenda, which is another one that's very popular. And what I'm saying is, that's what they know. They don't really know about, care blazers. So what we're trying to do is, what resources do we have? We really need a memory center. We need, and how
Yeah.
many, I'm sure the large centers in our area, in Chicago in particular, I'm sure Rush or University of Chicago, I'm sure those centers, they have this type, but a lot of people don't have access to that. So they don't get the kind of help they need. They just get a couple of pills and wait until it's over kind of stuff. So it's really difficult to get the help they need without more experts on the team that can help us. And
Right.
so, and even from my perspective, I have not yet shared with my neuropsych team that they have people like Amy Berger out there. Had they looked at this data and science yet? All Amy did was she was trying to do her thesis, right? She picked the topic, and it just happened to be a topic that had a great need. And the data that I hear things like, this is going to blow your mind. If you're 60 years or older, your chance of getting dementia is about 1%. Now this is the part that's gonna blow your mind. When you're 85 and over, your chances of getting dementia is 50%.
Wow.
That means if you live to 85, half the people that make it to 85 and later are gonna get dementia. Mind blowing.
Yeah.
So I thought diabetes was the most expensive disease. It actually may be dementia.
Wow.
And I just when I looked at the data, I couldn't believe it. So what we have to understand is that if that's true, and rather I'm 20, 30, 40, or 50, if I'm concerned about this if you're gonna live, most of us think we're gonna live to 85. So if you think you're gonna live to 85, you need to address this head on now. And the good news is, uh, you can have sweet potato pie sometimes, but you can't have it every day. You can have your cornbread sometimes, but you can't have it every time you eat greens. You need decent greens without cornbread sometimes. So those are the things, those are sacrifices. But man, I think the bigger sacrifice is getting dementia. Because what's scarier than losing
Yeah.
your brain?
Hmm.
I can't think
Absolutely.
of anything else, right? So I think that we have to accept that if we tonight, my son is cooking, and I'm not sure what he's making. He's gonna surprise us, but it'll be sugar starch friendly. It won't have all of that stuff. It just won't because and if my
Right.
20 and 22 year olds can adapt to eating this way, then certainly we all can. And they've learned how to be very creative with their they can make cheesecake that don't have sugar in it. How do you do that? But they can. So there's ways to do things that when I make chocolate cake, I use butter, dark chocolate, eggs, and vanilla flavor. That's it. And it's a chocolate cake. I put a little whipped cream and berries on Diet Doctor. If you just Google Diet Doctor low carb chocolate cake, it'll come up. And you're like, how in the heck, right? Is it going to take like Angelica, for those who are not local, Angelica Bakery, they make great cakes. It's not going to taste like that sweet, but you'll get to a point where that'll be too sweet for you. Like if I get a caramel cake from there, which I used to love, it's just too sweet for me. I mean, my palate has adapted to a different taste. And when I eat the cakes that I eat now, they taste much better. But for those who are
So
addicted,
true.
another guest I'm going to have is Joan Iflin, and she believes that food is an addiction for some people. And so I'm not sure it's a good idea to eat a cheesecake, even if it's not from with sugar, if you're addicted to to sweets, because then it's a trigger for you. So,
Yes.
so I think for everybody, you have to kind of find your lane. So that's where I'll stop there. I do. I want to
So the
make sure if we have more
yeah. So the
questions, because
next
I know I
question is
have. I
going to
know, believe it or
be.
not, I got another meeting at 7. But pray for me. But
So the next
so
question,
any
audience, is
any
going to
other
be.
questions? I know I see a
Yeah.
chat down here, and I don't know if
It's
it's
going to
something
be
we
the
touched
age
on. Okay,
audience.
okay, gotcha. So what I'll suggest with that in terms of the age of onset,
Hmm.
um, and the ages have gone down. I think there was a time, I think when we were younger, it was always the 70 plus, and but I do see people in my clinic as young as 55. Let's just I'm not talking about like mercury exposure. I mean, if you're born with something like Down syndrome, right? Those folk will have dementia at 40 because they have genetic, chromosomal abnormalities that predispose them to uh, the types of dementias they get. That's different. But if you're just talking about the regular person in the US who's eating the standard American diet, you really want to start, you'll start seeing it in the 60s for the most part, 60, 65. And
Hmm.
but the good news is, if what I'm saying is true, you can pretty much halt the progression fairly quickly by
Okay.
giving your brain an alternate fuel source. So I wouldn't. So if somebody's listening and they're at an age where they're like, "Well, I'm already 67. You're scaring me, doc, and I don't know where my keys are." So though, if that's you, then you have the opportunity to hear this message and then say, okay, am I going to now act on this information? Or is it like, it's almost like the person, I was joking with my son last night, how some people, they watch the exercise video with popcorn, you know?
Right.
So if you're watching this with popcorn, right, and you've heard this information, this is not entertainment, this is life-changing stuff.
Yeah.
Now think about it, if 50% of 85 and up year olds are going to have dementia, that means either you or somebody you love. Is it going to be you or you taking care of somebody? That's the bottom line. So this is
Mhm.
not a casual conversation. This is something you owe yourself at a minimum to learn even if you don't believe me, let's listen to Amy Berger when I do the podcast that comes out Friday. Let's get more information. Let's challenge that information. But I can guarantee you there's nothing else out there providing hope. So this is pretty much all, as our president said, what you got to lose. You don't have
Absolutely.
nothing that you got right. So let's try this because it could be a game changer for you. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
I want to say
Right.
that.
Okay.
All right. Right. Well, what
So
you
I
want to
asked, what should you
do
look for?
is think
What should you
about
look?
those symptoms again. So so in terms of what to worry about, what to look for, if you again, you want to be very nuanced because you don't want to go home and or be around your, older family member and they're having problems with their memory and you freak out. So the first thing you do is is what they're having issues with a logical thing? Like it's not logical to go into the kitchen and know how to put a meal together. That's not a logical thing for a normal person. If you go in the kitchen, you know where the pan's at, that's okay. But if you go in the kitchen, you're like, I've been making mac and cheese for years, of course, with cauliflower in my case. I've been making it for years, and I just have no clue what I'm doing. I'm in the bathroom and I'm looking at the towel, like, what is this towel for? So when
Okay.
you start seeing those levels of things, and what I would do, if you have a family member that you have access to, I would literally get a diary and just pay attention and say, okay, is this behavior, are they able, I call these functional behaviors, are they
Hmm.
able to function in society normally? And then you add the functional things. Do they bathe okay? Are they able to cook okay? Are they able to, put the clothes away and just basic stuff? Are they able to, get in the car and drive where they need to go? And then you start looking at those other cognitive things like the memory I mentioned and those other things that you then worry about as well. Because if you have to really put those things together, because if you because otherwise you'll get a little paranoid. And 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 another thing to do, which is easy, I would just get a list of symptoms. If you're really concerned, just Google the list of symptoms, and
Okay.
then like just kind of have them handy and pay attention to your family member. That way they won't you won't be, I don't want you to get paranoid about this. I just want you to act on the information, because if you don't act on it, I mean, there's certain things that people should be able to do. And if they're not able to figure out how to go from here to Walmart, where we just came back from, something's wrong. If they've been going to Walmart for years and all of a sudden, where is that Walmart at again? That's not a logical question. That's, if they're looking at something and they're like, so, yes, I don't know, but, and hi to Dana. So, so I think that's what I would say. And I know that this is a lot of information, guys, and I know that we have to wrap up shortly, and I apologize for the technical stuff, but I tell you, it's we can talk about it again. I think the next thing I want people to do though is they need to hear Amy Berger. And I'll be interviewing her, but if you just go to YouTube and type in Amy Berger, you can hear some YouTube stuff right now. I'm just going to ask questions. I'm trying to deviate a little
Hmm.
bit from the standards. And then we're gonna okay, who else can we listen to that can provide insight? But this is a
Absolutely.
huge problem that we have to address.
Yes.
So I just want people who are listening who had not heard some of this information to walk away acting on that information, because somebody in your family either has it or are gonna get it if it's
Right.
not us. And what my goal is, and one of the reasons why I walk around pretty happy, is because I just feel like I figured out some of this stuff. That's why I want to share it. So I don't really have fear. When I learned how to deal with COVID and knew how to protect myself, I go to work, I'm good. I do work at home twice a week, but I'm not living in fear. I also don't watch the news a lot.
Yes.
Somebody had to tell me there was some trouble in Chicago yesterday. I
Me
didn't know.
too. Me too.
And I need, right. So it's not that I don't need to know some of that, because I have a clinic where I have to help decide, do we keep the clinic open or not? But I don't feel to me, that's a toxin, all
Yes.
that negative. And that's
Yes.
another thing for this as we kind of wrap up. We need to have a way to be a community of support for people. That's going to help them heal as well. They need to know that their family's there to support them in a loving way, and
Hmm.
that'll extend the time, even if you don't do any of the stuff I said today, that they'll have a quality of life. And that's really, we got to be human, because we need love, we need people to
Yes.
value and respect us. And that's why you have to be careful how you talk to people, even with dementia, so they won't feel, a doctor walk into a room only talking to the family and not the patient. That's disrespectful. I don't care if they got
Yes.
dementia or not. You better
Yes.
act like they don't have dementia and talk
Yes.
to them like a human being, because
Say
they
that.
are perceiving some of that like a normal human being. So treat them that way, and then whatever's over the top. So I just talk to them like, They ain't got a problem. I say, hey, George, blah, blah, and then the family kind of chimes in, but I'm talking to the patient.
Yes.
That's how you do it. So I'm gonna have to probably
Uh,
wrap up with that, but I just want to let you know that I
yeah.
appreciate what you're doing. I
Okay.
think that rather you're a doctor, nurse, teacher, we have an opportunity to teach and help each other through this journey. So the work you're
Yeah.
doing is valuable. I'll be happy to come on anytime to talk about other topics, hopefully with less technical issues. I'm just
Yeah.
happy that my voice was heard. I'm glad
Yeah.
you were able to
Thank you
kind
so
of do your
much.
thing to get the questions to me. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And let me say this one thing. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of a shout out to our history. My kid, I got Brandon, my oldest son. He got a 75% scholarship at Washington University.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Get out
Yep.
of my pockets. And he'll be doing a MBA. And then my youngest son, both products of Providence St. Mel's, is at the same school doing really well. So I just wanted to let you know that what you guys did for them is wonderful. So thank you for that.
I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank
All
you
right.
so
So
much. Thank
have
you
a
so
great
much,
night,
Doc. I know you
everybody. I
have to
hope my
go.
words help, and
Appreciate it.
we'll be seeing each other again. All right.
Yeah. See you, Doc. I know
All
you
right.
have to
Take care.
go.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
everyone. I'm not ending just yet. Thank you guys for tuning in. That was again my good friend, Dr. Hampton, and I'm so happy to be able to have brought him on. I'm going to go back and listen to this recording because it is so much information that he's given us. I'm going to be looking into Amy Berger, the diet doctor, and Care Blazers. I've already looked that up as we were talking. We just have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves informed. And listen, if we ask for this information and people take their time to come on, you get to do what you want to do with that information. But I just think about this saying, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Like, if he's telling me that the sugar and all this stuff, carbs or what have you, could cause this, and we know that it is ramping up, and whether I will get it or somebody I know will get it, I'm gonna do what he says. You know, I'm a health freak when it comes to eating healthy and cutting things out of my diet. I'm certainly going to do that because I don't want to get dementia. And if he's telling us that it's type 3 diabetes and it can be prevented, come on, we got to be able to change some of the things that we're doing. We've got to be able to change some of the things that we're doing. One thing he touched on that I really appreciated is treating that patient, treating that family member, treating that friend like they're a human being, and and appeasing them. My stepdad had dementia, and he would say things about how was school. Well, I didn't say like at first I started out saying I'm not in school, Dad, I'm not in school. But after a while, I was just like, it was good. School was good, because I can imagine the confusion that someone suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, is going through already without someone arguing with them back and forth about them not being right, right? And so, do we want to love our loved ones, or do we want to just be right for the sake of being right? Right? If he saw things that I didn't see, I validated that they were there. Like, we can get that out the room. We can get that out the room. And I got that thing out of the room, and in his mind, the thing was gone. So, you know, uh, definitely look up Care Blazers because I just did look it up. And there's a lot of videos that are very helpful. I don't know if anyone has questions. I'm manning two devices at once to see if anyone had questions. I didn't see any questions pop up. So I've already told Dr. Hampton I really did appreciate him coming on. I hope you guys appreciated it. Please share, share, share. The other thing that I want to impress upon you from the mental standpoint of a caregiver, take care of yourself. You cannot take care of your loved one if you don't take care of yourself. Have a support system in place so that if you have a loved one who is suffering from this disease, that they're at the point where it's not reversible, have a support system where they can give you a break and you can kind of go and do some self-care and come back, because it's not an easy task, and I know it firsthand. It's not an easy task. It can be difficult, and you're trying to maintain your own health as well. So make sure you do that. I see you said, Kim, you said, yes, I do. You have a question. Um, I don't know if that meant you had a question, Kim. If you do, please drop your question. But please make sure that we're taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually. We need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. I don't see any questions. I was trying to linger around a little bit for anybody that might have had questions. We will be on next Tuesday. We'll be back on with my bestest friend, Stephanie. And I'll let you know really soon. Oh, okay. Thanks, Kim. She said, I'm just agreeing with you. Thank you. I'll let you know sooner than later, what the next topic is going to be that we're going to be discussing. And again, anything that you think that you want to hear or see us talk about, please make sure you let us know, because we're here for that. I am Michelle Bird, your mental health therapist. This is Heads Up Mental Clarity. Thank you for having joined me today. Um, you can find me on Facebook at Michelle Wallace Bird. You can find me on Instagram at Mrs. Bird LPC. I have my YouTube channel now. It's up and running since I'm able to stream now at multiple places. I'm also with the group private practice at Chicago Compass Counseling. And we have a website, www.chicagocompasscounseling.com. You can find me there. And you also can find me on Psychology Today under Michelle Bird. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in and being attentive and sharing and this information in my live with people so that we can reach the masses. This is what we can do for ourselves. Thank you again. Appreciate you. Bye.